What's up, everybody? This is Big Swiss, another episode of The Process. And today, I'm really excited about this. I've been listening to this guy for 20 years. I have the Braille from from being Braille and Humble Beast. But he's on the show today. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Man, well, I'm super excited that you're here today. Like I said, I've been listening to you for a really long time. Just grew to a lot of the stuff that you dropped to with that sphere of hip hop era. Man, you've been kind of coming back. And how's the coming back to the music world been?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of committed to whenever I finish a song, just put it out. So that's like the rhythm I'm trying to be in. And so I have a bunch of songs that I've started or have ideas for. And whenever one seems like it's close to the finish line, I just hone in on it, focus on it, try and put it out. My goal was to put out a song every other week the whole year, but I blew it already last week because I pulled a song that I was working on. I was like, it still needs a little more finesse. But nonetheless, that's really the thing. I'm just trying to force myself to consistently release music because it puts like an end goal in mind that if I just I'm going to work on music till I finish an album. I just don't think I'll ever finish an album without sharing music along the way, because I think that's part of the process for me is putting a song out into the world and then being like, is that how I was trying to represent that idea? Nah, let me take another shot at it. So you'll probably see that along the way, man. There's going to be songs that by the time the final album's done, I may release 2 or 3 versions of that song until I'm like, that's the version, that's how I want that song to be. And I'm kind of okay with that at this point.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the redo of Push It Down. I was listening to it on the way home today from work, and even just that singing element that you put just really changes the way. Because I remember when that dropped, did you listen to that originally in 21?
No, I mean, that was probably 2018.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's been that long? Gosh,
Yeah.
man. And I just remember that being like a really hard record. And I was like, okay, we getting hardcore Braille again after Worthy had come out. It's been since 2017 since Worthy dropped, and it's been 2011 was when Native Lungs came out. So there's been this period where you've been slowly dripping content, but now, like you said, you're trying to release a lot up to an album. Like, why coming back now? What's kind of reignited the inspiration to get back into writing music?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe I was being overly dramatic, but like 2011, I retired after Native Lungs as a solo artist. I was like, there's no way I can keep trying to do this. We started Beautiful Eulogy. That was refreshing, enjoyed it. But already by like 2013, I was like, I don't know that I needed to say I was retiring as a solo artist. I think I just needed a break. So then I started trying to work on a new solo album, Banquet for the Broken, 2013. And I've been trying to work on that album for 11 years since. So there's always been either other musical priorities that got in the way or just life events. And then 2018, I transitioned into vocational pastoral ministry. So at that point, I thought I was done with music. Not that I didn't have the desire to create, hence I'd make random songs. But I mean, if you look probably because I think Worthy was technically 2016, maybe. So I think I've probably released like 6 songs over the last 6 years or something like that.
Yep.
So it's such a modest output. And really, even those things that I released, like some of those songs, like the stuff I did with Poetics or whatever, he would just send me a beat. And I'm like, all right, let me just try and rap to it and see what happens. But it was not so much making music out of a particular inspiration. It was much more out of curiosity. And I think the biggest hurdle was like, I just got to the point where I didn't even feel like I could make something that I'd be happy with, especially transitioning from music was my vocation for such a long period of time. And I put all my time and energy into it. Now I'm in a season of life where I'm only able to maybe a few hours a week, or in the wee hours of the night, jump into some music. And so I just didn't feel like I could really pull it off. But last summer, I took an 8-week sabbatical from pastoral
Nice.
ministry. And that was after the first 5 years of ministry. And so 8 weeks goes by quick. I mean, we did some family trips and stuff, but I set up all my studio equipment in our laundry room in our house, the age of my kids and stuff. I'm just like, I think I'll be more productive from home than anywhere else. And so I just tried to zone out. Probably 2 weeks out of those 8 weeks, I was creating like
Mhm.
every day. And I started like hitting a rhythm. So like most of the songs that have come out, they were all made within that 2 week period. Yet always rejoicing, rest in, how many days. There's a few others that I just haven't finished yet, but I would say I made a good like 8 songs in that 2 week period that just needed further finessing. And so I was like, man, I think I actually could finish an album if I just kept working at it. And so once I was done with sabbatical, I was like, all right, progress is not as efficient as it was, but that's where I was like, let me just release them. Let me not get so caught up that like I get 8 songs done or started and then never release them. And then 5 years later, it's like I'm starting over again. So I was like, I'm just going to start releasing them while the iron's hot and then just keep going. So that's my goal. My goal is to finish the 11-year in the making Banquet for the Broken album this year. And if even if I release them one at a time, or if some of the songs that I release don't make the album, hopefully when it's all said and done, that final version of the album will be as close to what I am desiring it to be, you know. And so
I think personally, I think you're off to a start of reaching a level of quality that like we've come to expect from a Braille record, whether you're executive producing or in it. So I think maybe that time was used wisely when you made those 8 tracks so far. So I'm really fascinated in the fact that you left to go vocational ministry. So I'm in vocational ministry 9 to 5 as well. I'm also full-time seminary right now. And then I do Big Swiss. And so finding time to have a creative outlet is really interesting, especially because I'm on the creative team for my church. And so I'm around that all day. And so it's really hard to come home and turn on Big Swiss or any of the other podcasts that I run. How do you separate the two? And then how do you, as a pastor, how do you prepare for music as contrasted to how you prepare for a sermon?
yeah, I mean, I have friends where they feel like working on a song and working on a sermon is similar.
Mhm.
But for me, the differences are like pretty huge.
They gotta be.
So, you know, for a sermon, I'm not thinking about production, tempo, mixing. I'm just talking. You know, a sermon, you got 40 minutes, a song, you got 4 minutes. A sermon, I'm bound to a text of scripture. A song is more topical. A sermon, I can write it out shorthand and then flesh it out in real time. A song, you're bound to rhythm. So the differences are pretty huge for me. I'd say I feel a greater burden to preach than I do to make music. So I'm probably going to be preaching for the rest of my life, and maybe the window that I'm going to be making music is shorter. Uh, but I mean, the way the things have influenced each other, people do say I have a cadence, you know, when I preach, but that's not intentional. It's just how I talk. And I think there's a rhythmic way in which I talk that just comes from, you know, being a hip hop artist for so long. And then I would say like the last 6 years of preaching have helped me learn how to communicate more clearly. And so my audience for preaching is pretty broad. It's very generationally diverse. And
Mhm.
so I think that's spilling over to music as I'm starting to find my voice again, that I'm not necessarily writing records for MCs or writing records like for hip hop heads. I'm just expressing whatever idea I'm seeking to express in a way that seems to represent it the most accurately. And I'm willing to rap fast, rap slow, rap loud, rap quiet, have it be soulful, have it be chill. It's like however I can convey that idea. And I definitely think preaching has influenced that, where I'm more mindful of how do I get this across to my audience, as to where back in the day, I mean, really, I was just creating for myself. And the fact that I had to like present it to people and hopefully they would book me for concerts or buy the album so I could keep making them. But
Mhm.
really, like, it was just, there was this internal desire, like, I've got to make another album. I got to try. It's just what I love doing. And I would say I still have that aspect to me, but now it's just like, what am I trying to convey to people and what's the best way to convey it? And so preaching has shaped that part of me for sure.
Yeah. Well, I remember a long time ago seeing an ad for Logos with you and Beautiful Eulogy, and how you used this software, which I also use, to kind of inform how you think about songwriting. Um, and so what I'm interested in is especially something like How Many Days or Yet Always Rejoicing. You know, you're writing from this perspective that, at least with How Many Days, I feel like you're writing from the perspective of already being in heaven and being able to communicate what that is. And you do it in a way that it's kind of like a top down bop, if you will, but yet I also feel the joy in writing it. Like, I feel like you enjoyed writing that record. Like, there was probably some form of worship happening in the process of making it, not just performing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Beautiful Eulogy, like when we were messing with logos and stuff, I mean, bro, we were learning theology in real time and trying to translate it into records.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, in our early albums, I wasn't even in pastoral ministry yet, you know, so it's like I was in over my head trying to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to write theologically when back in the day I primarily wrote experientially, right? And so yeah, to study, figure it out. Now, I still use logos like every week in sermon prep. I don't really use it in songwriting anymore
Yeah.
because I've spent, you know, so many years exegeting the scriptures that to like emote theologically is a lot more natural. In fact, How Many Days, what's interesting is, so it was the last day of my sabbatical. I spent most of the day working on Yet Always Rejoicing. I just kept recording different versions of it. And I wanted to get one more song done before the end of my sabbatical. My family was out of town, so the house was empty. And I had a track from On Beat that I was going to use for How Many Days. It was like a slower piano track. I was like, maybe this is the right vibe for the song, but it wasn't quite scratching the itch for me. And probably at that point, like I've been trying to make a song called How Many Days the whole 11 years. Like most of my concepts for Banquet for the Broken, I've had the same concepts the whole 11 years, and I'll just keep making variations. Many of them, you know,
Wow.
have never seen the light of day, but you know, Obed, I already had got 2 tracks from him for the album. So I just was on Instagram. He posted like a SoundCloud link of some tracks he had. I was just like, man, let me listen through just in case something grabs me. I heard like the bones of How Many Days, and I played it through my speakers and I just start freestyling. I'm like, yo, this is actually the track for How Many Days. And I had the woke up in a world without darkness. I just had that line. That's all I had. I texted him, yo, can you send me this? I'll pick it up from you. And so he sent me a wave. I always try and record the waves. That way my vocals actually can line up with the stems. But by like 8 p.m. I had the file from him, and all I had was woke up in a world without darkness. And from 8 p.m. to midnight, I literally was just freestyling that record. So some of the joy that comes through in the record is nothing was written down. I was just punching myself in, laying down an idea, and being like, wait, what? Okay, what if I did this now? Doing it. The outro where I'm just singing and it's just happening. And it was the most joy filled recording experience I've ever had, especially by myself. Because I mean, it's the middle of the night, no one's home. I'm just by myself. I'm dancing around in my socks. And this is like my last night to make music before jumping into pastoral ministry. And so it was just coming out of me. And that was always the goal with Beautiful Eulogy, was studying to get to the point where we could emote, right? But now it's like I've already been doing the studying. like the last 6 years. So now it's like I don't need to study to emote. I just need to emote what I've been studying. And that's what Yet Always Rejoicing is. That's what How Many Days is. It's just me emoting off of theological reflection and letting it come out of me. And I'm getting more comfortable with that. But I don't know if I can repeat like what happened with How Many Days. It just happened that night, and I was really thankful for it.
Wow, man. That's the clip of the season right there. Like, that is what the process is for. That's the stuff I want to like learn about the way you guys create. Man, that's excellent. So I'm in a systematic theology class right now, and I'm in this like studying the doctrine of Scripture, and it's clicking in a way that's making me have joy in learning it, that's making the Scripture feel more real to me, and making me think like tomorrow when I read in my daily reading, I'm gonna enjoy it from a different perspective. And that's kind of what it sounds like you're going through. It's just been a long process. And the fact that you got to end on that, when I hear How Many Days, I literally picture you smiling, rapping it. I don't picture, that kind of Eminem style. I picture it just such a joy worship song, and just I can't wait for that day to come. And so that's such a cool story, man. Thank you for
What's a
on that.
trip? I think the initial when I first had an idea for How Many Days, I was writing it. I was gonna write it more like a lament. Like, oh God, like how many days? And it was more like until the bad is gone. It's kind of like you always see in social media some Christians like something happens in our world and they post Maranatha, and it's like the reason I want Jesus to come back is because I want to be done with the bad. And for me, the more I was like, I've been studying everything, it's like, man, it's not just that I want the bad to go away. It's like I want to live in the light and life of Jesus, And yes, with that, like the bad goes away, but it's also what comes, right? It's him. And so that's what's interesting with that song is it went from this like, Lord, how many days kind of lamenting being in this world to how many days like I got this living hope right now, and I'm living in anticipation of that. And if I could imagine like waking up in a world where there's no more darkness, no more death, the reason that world would exist is because of Jesus. And yeah,
Amen.
and so that's been like the way in which a song develops over time, where it's like I know I want to talk about something, but it's just how do I want to talk about it? That's going to be useful for others. But yeah, that's how that came together.
Wow, man, that's such a cool story. I'd be interested to hear how you would do it from a lament position. Like, how would you change the production tonally? Like, how would you change your inflection in your voice, your delivery, the cadence? I think that'd be an interesting exercise. And like you said, you may be doing different versions of things. I'm not telling you to do one on this, but
yeah,
that's just such an interesting perspective. We just did a creative team retreat this past weekend, and we had watched a video of Billie Eilish walking through her creative process, and then we talked about how does that work within ours. And she was talking about how many different ways she tries to pitch her voice for a song and trying to match it. And I'm like, oh, that's just a fascinating exercise to go through. So it's interesting that it started lament and then a joy, and you happen to get it laid out kind of in a freestyle on your last night. Like, that's wild. It's like it was meant to be.
for sure.
So you've been doing music for 20 years, over 20 years, just about now. Yeah. And what has been the biggest adjustment in your kind of approach to the industry, kind of 6 years removed from full-time music?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I started writing probably around age 13 or so. So, I mean, bro, yeah, a good 27 or I don't know, I'm 42 now. I was never like good at thinking through how am I branding myself or how am I navigating the industry. Probably I would have had a more successful career if I would have like picked a lane and just stuck in it. But my like natural like just curiosity, it's like every time I would like strike a chord, I would then want to explore something different, you know. So it's like I was in the group Lightheaded. We're making like jazzy
Mm-hmm.
rap, hip hop and like b-boy stuff. We're doing shows in Japan, but then I'm like, that's cool. But I also then I want to make more like darker, aggressive boom bap and like more lyricism focused. And so I was doing that with Shades of Grey, but then it's like I'm growing in my faith and I want to be more explicit in my faith. I start trying to work on boxer rhymes, but then like my management's like, you can't use samples. So I'm trying to learn how to make it sample free. And then I'm like, well, I'd like to work with the whole band. And then I try that. And okay, no, that's too difficult or it's not coming together. And, you know, was doing the shows with James Brown, try to take it that. I'm like, now I'm going to go back to boom bap. So then I do the IV and just like, you know, oh, man, me and S1 made a song that turned out cool. What if we did a whole project? Now I was going through something like crazy, went through a divorce, made Weapon Aid, you know, like now I'm back to this like more darker kind of emotional, you know, then come back with Native Lungs. You know, we start Beautiful Eulogy. Now it's like experimental, you know, worship music. And so for me, it was never like, what should I do that would like resonate with an audience or how do I brand it? It's just like my creative curiosity of what am I trying to express in this season and how do I do it? And I've always been like ambitious where I try and take on a project that is I'm in over my head. I'm trying to do something beyond the resources that I have, beyond the expertise that I have. And since I grew up in Portland, Oregon, like there wasn't music industry here and I was an early bloomer. So it's like there was nobody my age who was taking creating music seriously. So I was working long distance with people, like just finding beats wherever I could, you know, piecing together resources. And so, yeah, even coming back now, it's like, I mean, the industry has changed a lot, but I don't know. I'm not so, I mean, marketing has just never been my thing. I've never been good at it. I've never really cared much about it. It's been more just like a necessary. I want to be more intentional now, but it was like promoting myself has just always felt weird. It's just like I'll make a song, here it is. If you like it, awesome. If nobody likes it, that's okay. I'll try and make another one, you know, or whatever. But you know, now, I mean, it's just there's not so many middlemen, man. I mean, you can just finish a song and like release it to the world the same week. It wasn't that easy, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm kind of embracing that right now. It's different. I don't know how that fits within branding. I think like the challenges that I have in branding myself is not so much an industry problem. It's just like figuring out the best way to translate who I am as an artist. Cause like I know who I am like as a person, you know, but as an artist, you have to like hone that in. I don't know how to explain that other than it's like there's me hanging out with my kids, there's me like shepherding my congregation, there's like me with my wife, like all this is like the real me, it's my daily life. But how to translate that artistically in a way that's authentic. I think people can create music and they're very sincere and yet the song doesn't come off sincere at all. And like I don't think it's because they're not sincere. I think it's just they don't know how to translate the sentiment that they're trying to make. And then
Mm.
some people, they can be insincere and yet make records that resonate with you. You know what I mean? Because they're just good at executing an idea. And so, but I'm not good at like doing something uh, for the sheer purpose of like accomplishing the thing or executing it. It's just like I put my whole self into it, and uh, in that sense, it's like I don't know how to. If I don't feel raw, I don't know how to be raw. You know what I mean? Like, and if I don't feel confident, I don't know how to sound confident. And so I'm always like trying to figure out where am I authentically at and then how do I translate that musically because I don't know how to be something musically that I'm not as a real person.
Mm.
And that it's just like a weird, it's always been a weird thing for me, but that's partly why like my years in music has been just so all over the place, is because I'm just trying to figure out how does this season of my life translate sonically. And sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, I mean, I often hear the less contextual version of that is I'm just being me. But I think if I'm piecing together everything you've said today, is you're being you because I think you're able to recognize the way that God has wired you to create. Like it's like you're a reflection of his creation when you create things, but you only know how to do it through the lens of Brian Braille. You can't do Dear Stan or whatever, like you're not a character writer, you're a Braille writer.
Yeah, no, I'm a terrible actor. It was funny, man. We did the the Shaolin Animal Farm video, and I'm dressed up as the pig, and it was hilarious because if you see the part where we're doing our speeches, right, and Shai's like, "I want you to act out like you're giving the most passionate speech of your life." It's so hilarious because you look at the video. First of all, I'm standing on a hay bale and I got real bad equilibrium issues. And so already, like, my mobility feels limited. And he's telling me, give the most passionate speech. And I'm like, I don't know how to get in a character of saying that I'm a pig who's really a dog, and like how to emote that. And I'm not even using my mouth, I'm just using my body language. So when he says, like, here, pretend like you're working out trying to lose weight, I'm like, okay, I know how to do that. But it's like, yeah, in terms of having like acting chops, I can't. I'm a terrible actor. Like, I'm terrible. Even when you're like with me, I just wear, like, wherever I'm at. Like, it's hard for me to act like happy if I'm not happy. It's hard for me to act sad if I'm not sad. Uh, I'm just kind of 100% in. Now I will censor myself, obviously, for the benefit of the people that I'm with. Meaning, I'm seeking to serve others from whatever authentic position I'm in. So it's not just I'm just me, take it or leave it. But yeah, I just don't know how to put on emotions. They're just either there or they're not.
Yeah. But you do wear a lot of different hats. I mean, you run Humble Beast, you're a pastor, you've also executive produced a few albums, and one of the albums you did was Jackie Hill Perry's Crescendo, which is, I think, probably in my top 10 all-time album experiences. Do you prefer being behind the boards and kind of being more of a creative director in a sense for an album, or do you prefer doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like one preference over the other. In this season, I wouldn't take on executive producing because I find that once I'm doing that, my own music just falls to the wayside. Because when I do executive produce, I put as
That's your
much of
priority.
myself, huh?
That's your priority.
Yeah, I put as much of myself into someone else's album as I would into my own. And so I executive produced every Humble Beast release, and I absolutely loved it. In another sense, I was wearing too many hats. Like, while we were doing that, I was helping collect the production. I recorded every vocal.
Wow.
I arranged the songs. I mixed them, and we didn't have that large of a team working together. And so part of that was just like I wore a lot of hats. I learned how to wear those hats, and it's almost like either we needed a larger team or a much larger budget. And since we didn't have those things, because there was like a standard, I was like, I have to learn how to do this if I want it to come close to what we're aiming for. So yeah, I really enjoyed that process. I think the biggest thing for me, I liked executive producing other people's records because it was the most collaborative I'd get to be in the creative process. Because when I work on my solo stuff, I've never had an executive producer come alongside and help me make an album, you know? So it's like I've had to, when I'm making my own stuff, I'm recording myself, I'm tracking down the beats, I'm arranging the songs, I'm mixing them. I'm wearing too many hats as a solo artist. Like I would love one day to like find the right fit of just a person who's in proximity to me, who's like, yo, I'm as invested in your record as you are. Let me come alongside you and help make it be the best it can. But that just hasn't really ever happened.
Who do you think
And
could do it for you the best?
I have no idea. I don't think people know or I know until it just happened. But part of that again was just coming up in Portland, Oregon, and coming up in the era that I came up in. So I definitely had people that I worked closely with, but it was typically long distance. And they were playing a role, but they weren't like executive producing, So I'd work closely with Tony Stone. He'd be making the beats for me, but like, he'd make like 40 beats and I'd pick 7 of them. You know what I mean? I'm executive producing and I'm kind of directing and steering. But yeah, working on Jackie's album, I mean, worked with her on Art of Joy, worked with her on Crescendo. The first time she was in the booth with Art of Joy, I mean, she had like very little experience in terms of recording and stuff. She was mostly known as a poet. Thomas had the hunch that, man, she could probably kill it as a rapper as well, and knew she had an interest. And so once she was in the booth with Art of Joy, I'm like, man, she's just standing there on her phone and Timberlands on, picking verses. I'm like, I've watched guys break a sweat, sitting in the booth for like 40 minutes, trying to get one verse down. She'd do like 2 or 3 takes. She's like, yeah, that sounds cool. And I'm like, okay. So Crescendo, she comes with the idea where she wants, the hymns incorporated and everything. And man, I was, we had a little bit of a budget. So it's like I'm tracking down beats for her, sending her submissions. Man, probably went through like hundreds of beats on that album, different people collecting the pieces, putting them together, recording her vocals. So yeah, I absolutely loved that. And I think in a lot of ways, working with her and working with others was part of where it was like the idea of sitting down and trying to wear that same hat for myself as a solo artist and then try and like match the energy that they were bringing. I'm like, man, at that time I felt like executive producing was more my bag than being an artist was. But yeah, now it's like my margin just being so slim. I want to actually focus on trying to make a record.
Man, that's wild. Especially how much stuff y'all put out. Are you still doing Humble Beast? Are you still involved, or what's? I haven't really been keeping up.
I kind of backed out once I took on pastoral ministry. I backed out just because A, I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth. B, we kind of had slowed down from putting out records. And when it came down to the wire, it's like I'll be up till 2 a.m. if I had to, like whatever. Like again, like I put my whole self into it. And so I knew once I transitioned to pastoral ministry, I just wouldn't be reliable to help people make an album. And so I didn't want anybody's like stuff being held up by the fact that I just didn't have the capacity to be involved.
Well, you were protecting yourself from burnout.
For sure. Which I think I was already on the verge, or I was already there anyway.
Speaking of directions, Flex was kind of the first of the Banquet series, I think, with AI the Anomaly. How was it? That song is so intense. Like you're telling this really in like kind of all these traumatic points in your life to how you got to where you are. How was it kind of revisiting in that process and like kind of putting on a hat from thinking of, 2008 and everything that happened since then? Like walk me through how did you get there?
Yeah, man. The when I would show people the song, they're like, man, thank you for being so vulnerable. And I was like, oh, I wasn't even like self-aware in terms of being vulnerable. Like I was just trying to tell the story. And it was like, I was vibing to the beat and I was like, okay, how you going to flex on me? Like, okay, I'm coming back. Like, but where have I been? And it just seemed like a little bit of a story where anything that like how I ended up where I am today was not really through my successes. it was like everything got turned upside down on its head. And at the end, it's like I had nowhere to go except to the Lord. I went to the Lord and he completely changed my life. I was already a believer, but it was just like he became my everything to a greater degree. And so it was like, but what was the process of how did I get there? It's not even where I was trying to get to. It's like the Lord took me through trial and difficulty and brought me closer to himself. And so it's like, what am I going to boast in or be like, yo, I've been in the game this long, or I've done this, or it's like, man, everything that I did in so many ways fell apart. So it's like, there's no clout for me to like try and claim. I'm just like, man, like I'm coming at this point. I'm just like starting over. I know the Lord because He's made Himself known to me. So let me try and meet people where they're at in life, sharing the grace of Jesus. And so it just seemed like a fitting like reintroduction to, instead of like coming with my first song like coming out the gate like, yo, Braille's back, like da da da, you know, whatever people expect. It was like a palate cleanser. Like whatever you might think you're gonna get from me, it's probably not gonna be that. Here's just me over like the chillest track I could find, um, telling you what's in the rear view mirror as I try and move forward. And then I got AI on it. I was just thankful that she said yes, because over the last few years, she was one of the few artists that I found new where I was like, man, I just love what she does, you know? And so if I could, I felt like it would motivate me. But when I was going to get her on the song, I wasn't intending that I was going to rap that long or like tell that story. I was just like, okay, flex. Okay, this, she might sound good on this. But then once I started writing, that's just what came out. And I was like, it was pretty difficult to edit it. But I think like the biggest challenge for me was not being vulnerable, was just how to tell the story, but still leave some for the listener's imagination. You know, so when I'm talking about our house being burned down, or I'm talking about being betrayed, it's like I'm not getting into the weeds of the story. I'm just giving like broad strokes and leaving enough to the imagination to be like, oh, okay, that, oh, and then that, and then that, but not in a, hopefully not in a self-indulgent way, or not in a way that's like um, trying to make people who were involved in those things feel bad. It's just like I'm just giving some high level touch points of, this is the sequence of events that was going on in my life.
It feels like a testimony.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I took it. I was like, oh, he's sharing his testimony right now, and how like the Lord still carried him through that. Sorry, I'm still getting over, like, I've been having this lingering cough from a flu I had 2 weeks ago, and it's annoying me. But yeah, AI, I actually haven't released this. I did a top 10 singles of 2023, and I had Flex on there, and I would just play the song. I would like, hey, this is the song that I like at number blah blah, and I'd play it. And there's a part in AI's verse on that where she talks about like, am I Pharaoh? I don't remember the exact line, but like it triggered me. I started crying on camera. That's not why I didn't release the video. I was just too busy to edit it. But I was like, man, I should just cut that and send that one out, because I think there's something that, there's kind of what you're saying about what she's been releasing the past few years. What I've seen her do is be able to communicate the most emotion in the least amount of words.
Mm-hmm.
It's a skill, and I think she was able to deliver that on Flex as well. So it's really cool that y'all, did she help edit your verse?
No, no. When I sent it to her, I had the whole intro and my whole verse. I don't think the scripture reader was there yet, but there was like a just an open space for her at the end.
Okay. Sweet, sweet. Well, what has been your favorite song of the new ones that you've dropped? What has been like the one that you're like, man, I'm proud of this, you know, in the most humble way that you could be proud of it?
Yeah, I mean, probably how many days, but I would say, like, if I was gonna guess, as the album comes to completion. Yeah, Flex and How Many Days are like the closest to how I think they should be as the final version. Yet Always Rejoicing is also close, though. I'm curious what else could be done. And then I would say Restin', it's weird, man. When I made Restin', it was one of the first songs I made, and I loved it so much. I would listen to it over and over again. But there's times when by the time you finish a song, things can just get lost in translation. And I feel like the final version of the song, I don't love it the way I was loving it when I made it. And I don't fully know why, but I figure I'll probably revisit that song before it comes out. It's like I know it still conveys some of the essence, but yeah, it's almost like it became too clean. And I think before it was like mixed and opened up, it was like the vibe was more, I don't know, it wasn't as sparkly, but like, I don't know, the joy was, yeah, not it, there was less distracting. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, so I don't know.
I'm gonna re-listen to that tonight with that in my head.
Yeah, it's because that song was mostly freestyle as well, and except for the chorus. Well, the chorus was a freestyle, it's just they were at different times. And so that it came really natural to me, and it just doesn't feel as natural now when I listen to it as it did when I made it. And I think that's the new challenge for me in mixing, is just how to mix a record where it feels finished but it still feels natural. And again, you just spend so much time with your own song, you can lose perspective.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I have so many questions just on that, but I want to keep us on time and respect your time and stick to the script. So, one thing that I wanted to learn from you is most of the people I brought on the process are younger artists, up and comer. You know, I've had a couple veterans on, but you're kind of the one with the most experience. What would you want someone to understand about, like, let's say an up and coming artist that wants to be a Christian artist? How would you kind of coach them up in what to understand about the relationship between your faith and being a creative?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of your faith, I don't think there's anything magic for the artist that's not the same for all Christians. So I would just tell the Christian artist, root yourself in a local church. The ordinary means of growing as a believer should not be neglected. The other thing just to note is that very few Christians get as much attention as artists do. And so you need to counterbalance, being the center of attention with finding ways to serve God's people under the radar. I have noticed Christian artists can become very disillusioned with the church when they're doing shows at the church, relating with Christians who are fans of them. And it can even result in like looking down on God's people or relating with the church transactionally. I don't have answers for all that, but it's just like, man, God's mission for the nations involves the church. The gospel's preached, disciples are made, churches get established, leadership is appointed. The church is never going to be perfect this side of glory, but the church is still God's plan A. And so even if you're not making music for the church, but you're making music as a believer, then you want to be a part of the church, and you also want to love the church. And so I think that's just super, super important. And the ordinary means that God is going to use to mature even your audience over the long haul is going to be the local church. Like, music can inspire us, can like get us excited about the Lord, but the day-to-day grind of life is going to be learned walking in the trenches with other believers, know? And so our music can, like, it doesn't have to be like the final answer, the final solution, the secret key. It is like it is a bonus means of encouraging people, ministering to them, meeting them where they're at. But like, the normal means that God uses to grow people, to sustain people, to mature them in the faith tends to be the local church. And so I think believers, we want to be in the local church, and we also want through our ministry to point to things beyond just what we're doing, and care about the health, the spiritual health of those that we're ministering to.
Wow. Well said. The channel that that process comes out on, we do a Monday night. When I'm done with this, I'm hopping on another podcast, and we talk a lot about indie Christian culture, and a lot of times we talk about what's happening in Christian hip hop. And I mean, a lot of the conversation can sometimes lead towards, how are these people being plugged into? What are they in a community? Are they involved in the church? That's why one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, it's like, you and I are in vocational ministry, and we have creative aspects to our lives. And so I feel like everything you've said tonight has been kind of refreshing for me. And I'm not even a musical guy. I mean, I am a musical guy, obviously, but I don't make music. But it's a good reminder of why we do what we do, how we're supposed to engage with the body. And through that service is what propels us to help create even better. I think my wife and I serve in a premarital ministry where we do kind of an 8-week study. Do y'all have Merge out? Have you heard of Merge?
I haven't heard of it, no.
Okay. I know that we have it. I'm sure there is a church in Oregon that does Merge. And so that's where we serve. And it's just, it allows me to use and call on that service in times of maybe other ministry with somebody else in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's the same way for creating. You might read a psalm and the light clicks on, and you go straight into that. So that I think you hit the nail on the head. That's a bullseye right there. So what can we expect? I mean, I know you kind of said you're trying to do this release strategy. We're releasing every other week or whatnot. What are we looking at for Braille for the rest of the year?
Yeah, well, this year is the 20th year anniversary of Shades of Gray. And so I get the test presses this week for a double vinyl release. It's just going to be 300 copies. And so
I'm going to buy one of those.
What I want to, part of what I'm toying with is doing some limited edition vinyl releases, both of older stuff, but even of new stuff. And I think it's helping just clarify. I don't know. It's like I'm enjoying the digital, and then like stepping into some tactile stuff is just helping me to think about the final product and how everything fits together. And so, yeah, so that's been fun, putting that together. And, my first goal other than that is to finish Banquet for the Broken. And then it's like, I just have tracks I've collected. I mean, it's embarrassing how many times I've tried to stir up inspiration, even like purchase tracks. It's like, I've got a bunch of tracks from 1995 that I was purchasing over the years, like trying to do an EP with him. I've got a bunch of tracks I purchased from Dax Hammer. Like maybe I could do an EP with that. I've got a batch of tracks from Ayo Shamir that I collected that I'm like, that could be an EP.
Dude, you're teasing me. You're teasing us.
So what I'm trying to do is think through, after Banquet for the Broken, of having like a whole album, doing shorter thematic projects that are like 6 to 8 songs.
Yeah.
Do them on limited edition vinyl, and where it's like, maybe I have like one theme in mind, and then all the songs are me talking on that same topic, but looking at it from different angles. And so, so that's like, I just want to keep creating, really. And I have like, I'm not going to let the cat out the bag premature, but like, I'm trying to start like a brand that can house that, so that it's not just like I'm just trying to promote Braille, but I can start putting together projects and then content that goes with those projects, but it has like, there's a brand or a house for it. So that's like, yeah, just be as productive as I can with the time that I have, and really just enjoy creating. And I'm going to probably, like I have in the past, not just stick with one sound or one direction, but just keep trying things out and seeing what makes sense in different seasons.
Man, that's awesome. Well, man, I want to keep you on time to pray for you. And
that's very appreciated, man.
Heavenly
Thank
Father,
you. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I was saying thank
go
you,
ahead.
but go for it.
We got a delay. We got the delay back.
That's okay. That's
I'll
okay.
pray.
I knew there was a little bit of a delay, but I was like, oh yeah, there we got a real delay going on. That's all good. No,
Yeah.
I was saying thank you, but go for it.